This led to a new word coined by British anatomist Richard Owen. Other than Charles Darwin, he became the most famous scientist of the 19th century Great Britain, which he actually clashed with Darwin on some of his ideas. Advanced slide. He was an expert in bone structure, and he coined the term in 1842 from two Greek words, dino and saurus, which meant awesome lizard. And that's how we get Dinosaura as a suborder of reptiles. Next slide. In England, dinosaurs were getting some attention. In the Crystal Ice Palace exhibition in London in 1851, this beautiful glass building was on display. Next slide. But erected in the garden around the building were models reflecting some of these recent discoveries. Megalosaurus and Iguanodon were displayed. These original models were still there in the London Park to this day. One of the more significant finds, certainly in America, was involving Dr. Joseph Leidy. Dr. Leidy was a scientist, and he had an institute in Philadelphia. He heard of some bones being found on a farm just over the border in Haddonfield, New Jersey. A friend who had been looking at the bone invited Dr. Leidy to come and inspect them. They dug them out of a pit and eventually brought them back to Dr. Leidy's institute. They were assembled and put together on display. This was the first dinosaur found in America, and they named it Hadrosaur. This was in 1960. Nope. Okay. This, most importantly, it was the first dinosaur skeleton on display in the world, and because of that, it attracted huge crowds. People wanted to see these new creatures. Today, even museums of natural history tend to have such an exhibit, as this was the first one ever. It was sensational. Here is an artist's rendering of the first dinosaur. It was a very rare find because the fossil bed that it was found was mostly entirely seashell. Very few remains of other dinosaurs have been found in its deposit, so it was quite a remarkable discovery of dinosaurs in place in American culture. Museums across the country, especially in the East, wanted to get skeletons themselves, so dinosaur hunters were making the news. They would go to Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, Colorado, and part of Arizona and Utah to try and find some bones, assemble them, and bring them back to display. The world was getting better acquainted with dinosaurs in Europe. In the late 1800s, they were finding more iguanodons, while also in Europe, American dinosaurs like the large Brontosaurus was on display in Le Louvre in Paris, and was making its way to some other major museums. The American Museum of Natural History in New York was able to locate and display a skeleton called the Brontosaurus, which means underlizard. It was a sensational find because preserved and fairly complete. However, they found out later that the skull and the body were from different animals. They had the head of a Apatosaurus and a Camarasaurus head. In spite of this, the name Brontosaurus still endures. It was fabulous, and people were awed at the size of some of these dinosaurs, these awesome lizards. In the photo, it's being assembled and put on display. Next one. Also, at the American Museum of Natural History, there was a painting done by a gallery artist. A look at the picture itself gave people an image of what it was like to be back in the year of the dinosaur. To be back when these great creatures roamed the earth, and it's really, really sparkled the imagination. What would it be like to live around these huge bus-sized animals? Next slide. Dinosaurs were most famous because of their size. However, the teeth of these creatures were clearly vegetarian, and so the only fear of living around them might have been just don't get stepped on. Then one day they found something serious. These teeth did not look vegetarian. Okay, Henry Osborn, next slide please. Henry Osborn, an American paleontologist, studied a Wyoming fossil in 1905, and he named it Tyrannosaurus rex, which means king tyrant lizard. In 1905, the first T-Rex was put on display. Imagine the reaction. Suddenly, dinosaurs represented something more than just don't get stepped on. T-Rex was something you wanted to avoid altogether. Next slide. Okay. T-Rex is a very popular dinosaur that people want to know about. It's practically thought of as king of the dinosaurs. But what do we know about them? Well, one thing we know is that they ate Triceratops. But we don't know if it was a predator or a scavenger. We know that it ate Triceratops because we found T-Rex skeleton with a little bit of Triceratops bones in its stomach activity. On the right of the screen is a picture of the fossil remains containing a T-Rex and a Triceratops. When they examined the Triceratops fossil, they found teeth marks on the bones. And when they looked at the T-Rex, it had broken ribs. It looks like these two dinosaurs may have been trying to get to high ground as the waters of the floods were rising. Perhaps they got too close to each other and were battling when the water caught up with them and they were covered altogether. It would be hard to describe any other scenario that would cause that. Next slide. T-Rex has left a couple of known footprints. Here's one. It is 33 inches long, 28 inches wide, and 9 inches deep. This footprint was found in New Mexico in 1983, but wasn't identified until 1994. This obviously is from a very heavy animal. Next slide. For a number of years, this T-Rex specimen was the best found ever. Advanced. It was 40% complete and displayed in a Hill City, South Dakota museum. You might ask, is that all they find of these dinosaurs? The majority of dinosaur skeletons are found incomplete. To find a complete one, and especially one with a skull, is quite a discovery. Actually, a skeleton can be 10% and it still meets the minimum requirement for being called a skeleton. And anyways, this T-Rex was the most complete found until they found one called Sue. Sue was discovered in 1990 in South Dakota. We call her Sue, well, we call her she, but we don't know the gender of the dinosaur. They're normally named after their discoverer, so Sue was named after the lady who found these bones in South Dakota. Sue was 90% complete, advanced slide, and had a very complete skull. And she was sold for $8 million to the Field Museum in Chicago, where she is the star of the museum. Next slide. Dr. Haddon says they built a new section in the museum where she's proudly displayed. Okay. T-Rex fossils are also important for another question, and that is, how old are these fossils? We're going to talk about that in our next presentation when we talk about the origin of the Earth. We'll examine one of the greatest challenges for creationists, and that is, what is the age of the Earth? Don't rocks tell us that the Earth is millions of years old? This is the standard understanding today. But in 2005, scientists broke open a T-Rex femur and took it to a laboratory to study the interior. When they found out what they found out was something they were not expecting. They found interior vessels that were still soft and flexible. They saw what appeared to be red blood cell stains. It had been assumed that organic materials could not possibly be present in something that was, according to the standard model, 65 million years old. How could they still be there? We will examine this in the next video. Other evidence of dinosaurs would be footprints. Footprints are still considered fossil evidence. Here's a three-toed footprint. It provided information about stance and about gait when walking. Another question for many is, were dinosaurs really reptiles? Two dinosaur fossil finds answer the question. First, preserved dinosaur skin had been found among skeletal remains, where what we mean about skin being preserved is the impression or cast when mud that covered the body of the dinosaur eventually hardened. This revealed the pattern of the skin. This mud cast of a hadrosaur's skin, this is the mud. Yeah. Notice the scales in the picture on the left. The second fossil evidence are eggs. They found eggs like any reptile with legs. People wonder about eggs of the dinosaur in so-called nests. Okay. One might think a dinosaur egg would be the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. Instead, they're just a few inches across, about the size of a modern-day ostrich egg. Predator eggs were longer and narrower, but about the same volume. Here's a picture of one that had an embryo, but almost all dinosaur eggs are actually either broken fragments or there is only sand and rock filling the interior. It's incredibly rare to find one with bones. Recent dinosaur discoveries are often made out in the fields of Wyoming and Montana and southern Alberta. These are places that are Cretaceous and Jurassic fossil layers at the surface of the ground. At a dinosaur dig in northeastern Wyoming, volunteers would work under the direction of Southwestern Adventist University. They get together every year in the month of June and do a dinosaur day and find lots of bones. This video today will highlight their work. Okay. On the right is a rib, and on the left is an unknown bone that stumped the experts. These bones were mostly from a giraffe-sized Edmontosaurus, which is a type of hadrosaur. Yes. As the rib is being pulled off of the ground, you might notice a little bottle of what looks like super glue. It is used to spread on the bone to make it very hard and easier to remove. Eventually the bone will be wrapped up and taken to the university for further study. Before they are removed completely from the ground, there will be GPS locator to record the position of the bone. Eventually, photographs will be taken of the bone, and these photographs will be dropped into a computer program. This is a display showing the bone after removing all the dirt. They appear floating in the location where discovered. Notice that there are virtually no skeletons. These are all disarticulated bones. Almost all of these bones are from the hadrosaur, a giraffe-sized dinosaur that was mentioned. They are all scattered around in mudstone that's approximately 4 feet thick. There's only one way of describing how these bones got there. That would be through the action of water that rolled the bodies for miles and miles. Eventually, those bodies came apart, and the bones themselves were scattered like this, covered, preserved, and turned into fossils. Okay, what does this look like? Oh wait, I gotta go back. Go back. Yes. Okay, what does this look like? When we look at dinosaur bones, it's not difficult to imagine, at least in some cases, what dinosaurs might look like. This is an Ankylosaurus skull. And we can imagine it probably looks something like this. Okay, so do we have dinosaurs today? Evolutionists excitedly answer yes. We call them birds. Dinosaurs are thought to have eventually evolved into birds. Two popular theories among scientists in the world today describe how they might have happened. Advanced slide. One is from large ground bipeds. A lot like the T-Rex pictured here, the two-legged dinosaur. The theory proposes the short forearms grew longer and evolved into wings. The back part of the dinosaur would become much smaller, but the theory is a bit of a challenge. Another theory is small crocodiles from the trees. This is the idea that dinosaurs could have been jumping from trees to grab prey and jumping further and further, eventually with wings, would develop the dinosaur into bird. Okay. These are current theories in evolutionary thinking, but here is the problem. But there are problems. Large legs, small forearms, and heavy tails. You need the opposite. Okay. Skin folds have to become wings. A cold-blooded animal must turn into a warm-blooded animal, and bumpy scales must turn into feathers. It would need to go from bumps on the tops of their skin to something growing from underneath their skin, a follicle that eventually became a feather. That's all. Yeah. So, one of the interesting things about this idea is in looking at where this all might fit into the geologic column. A feathered bird is found as low as Middle Jurassic layer. This Archaeopteryx was found in Germany and was dated to 150 million years ago using the standard dating model. At the time of this discovery, this half-lizard-looking bird greatly helped Darwin's theory. Next to the bird is the geologic column. Let's add dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are only found in the top of the Jurassic, and Cretaceous layer. Here's where the flying dinosaurs like the pterodactyl were found. Now let's look at where land dinosaurs are found. They start a little lower than the flying ones do. But despite what you might think, birds did not evolve from flying dinosaurs. Now the dinosaur to bird evolution theory holds that they came from land dinosaurs. There's a little bit deeper layer into the Jurassic where land dinosaurs are found. So the idea is that in the millions of years in between the beginning of the dinosaur and the beginning of birds, an ancestor might have eventually evolved into the first bird. But the problem is further complicated because footprints of feathered birds have been found in the top of the Jurassic layer. So here is a picture of footprints found in Argentina. There's definitely bird footprints because they have the backwards toe. The helix on the back of the foot. We can see there's no pattern of walking. The bird had some point in the past hopped around on mud. Perhaps as the waters were rising, they left these footprints. This is what the Argentinian scientists said. It's significant because we find footprints in morphology identical to modern birds in rocks that predate about 55 million years. The first record of true osseous. This scientist is saying that the shape of the foot sure looks like the modern bird, but can that be if that's 55 million years older than the first fossilized bird found? It's difficult. Dinosaur evolution by types is another question to look at. The animal with the question marks, the lizard-like creature on the left side of the screen, is supposed to be the imagined ancestors to all the dinosaurs. Not yet found, but is expected to be in the Jurassic layer of the fossil record. This is an idea constructed of how the different families might have evolved. We have found fossils beneath these animals in the right column, so we should find some fossils at those branching points on the left that are on the way to becoming the dinosaurs on the right. But, however, no such ancestors have been found, including ancestors to birds. Evolutionist David Wishmael wrote about this problem of dinosaur evolution. Okay. From my reading of the fossil record of dinosaurs, no direct ancestors have been discovered from any dinosaur species. Alas, my list of dinosaurian ancestors is an empty one. When you think of evolution, you think about dinosaurs being prime examples of evolution, but in fact, no ancestors have been found. This is the problem we saw in the fossil record from the last presentation. Fossil species immediately show up with no ancestors in the geologic record. It's absolutely the same for dinosaurs. When we talk about dinosaurs, people are curious about their size. Our current record holder for size is the Argentinosaurus. You can get the idea of where this is found, but this is the largest type of date to date, about 130 feet long. However, just one bone has been found. So how small do dinosaurs get? Well, they get pretty small, about the size of If that's true, then what's the difference between a dinosaur and a regular reptile? It's not size, so what is it? Okay, The answer is its hips. The lizard has hips, but the leg is straight out from the body. This Komodo dragon on the left is a big lizard from today. Notice how the legs go straight out from the hip and how it's put the body fairly close to the ground. On the other hand, in dinosaurs, the hip puts the legs straight down, whether it's two-legged or four-legged, and this gets the body well off the ground. Let's take a look now at the short video.
In the mid-1800s, when dinosaur bones were being found all around the world, they did much to strengthen Charles Darwin's questioning of the biblical account of creation. There's no question that these bones reveal an ancient world much different than the world in which we're living now. Let's go and take a look at where those dinosaur bones are being found. Let's go to a dig site in the state of Wyoming.
I got a call from a friend of mine, and he told me about this place in Wyoming where there were a lot of dinosaur bones, and that they wanted a creationist to work on it. So I wasn't really initially interested, so I called a colleague of mine who's a vertebrate paleontologist, and he came out and looked at it. Subsequently, he brought me out here, and we looked at it together, and the owner of the ranch, who's a very wonderful person, brought me up onto one of these ridges. It's actually very near here. And he opened up the door of his truck and got out, and he said, okay, hop out. And I looked down at the ground. It was covered with dinosaur bones. I couldn't walk on the ground. I had to step nimbly to keep from stepping on them. But that convinced me that I needed to spend time on this, because these bones are being washed away and they're lost to science.
So somewhere, sometime, dinosaurs were here. And what we see behind us, this whole area is the main core. You see there's some outlying cores. But the main cores are approximately a meter thick and cover quite an area. So the little bits you see here that's already been taken out, a couple other cores are about 1.5% of what we think the whole bone bed is. We have quite a range of dinosaurs with the main ones are hadrosaurs. They are the duck-billed dinosaurs, 35 feet long, 6 tons, 5 to 6 tons, big ones. These dinosaurs show a lot of decay took place before they were buried, ultimately buried, and they've been buried and then re-emerged. But the most sensible scenario I can think of is that these dinosaurs were killed probably by drowning or some other cataclysm, and they floated and bloated so that their carcasses were floating on water. They were probably driven onto a shoreline by wind, where they rotted for a period of time. And during this time they were rotting, the carnivorous dinosaurs were still around, and they came over and began to eat on these carcasses, because we find the shed teeth of carnivorous dinosaurs, of the theropods. We find those in amongst the bones. Ultimately, the bones were remobilized and transported out into deeper water. And we know that because they were put on a braided bed. So the big bones are at the bottom and the little bones are at the top.
Our project has advanced our view on origins because of the techniques we use. The high-precision GPS data allows us to map our bone beds. And by doing so, we've been able to figure out what event led to all these dinosaurs being deposited at this site. Our system is so advanced that the greater scientific community has noticed what we're doing, and we've been able to publish our data. I think this is amazing because not only are we seeing that our deposit was put there by a flood-like event, Now, the other scientists are examining their bone beds and looking for alternative scenarios. They're also seeing evidence of catastrophic flood events. And even though we can't say this is a global type flood event just yet, we do see more and more evidence for catastrophic flood events resulting in large bone beds.
One of the questions a lot of young people have is where did the dinosaurs come from? Did God make them, or are they some anomaly of nature that is freaky and difficult to explain? I think most kids love dinosaurs, and I think it's really clear God made dinosaurs. They were alive, they were amazing creatures, and there are whole ecosystems that comprised of dinosaurs.
Will there be dinosaurs in heaven? I sure hope so. I love to be a good Christian, to try my best, but I get a little extra motivation from thinking that I get to play with a T-Rex or play fetch with some raptors in heaven. I personally think they're remarkable animals, and I can't wait to see them in person. At least I hope. I can't prove it, but I really do hope we get to see them again.
I would love to see some, like feathered dinosaurs like the, Deinonychus and the raptors and things like that, and see really how bird-like were they. I think that some of those dinosaurs probably were part of God's creation, and so I hope. I don't know, but I hope.
I'm a biologist. I want to study these things. And I will tell you that when I look at dinosaurs, they're not the dreadful things that are frequently depicted in the movies. Yes, there are obviously some that were predators of various kinds, some of them terrifyingly big like T-Rex, or just terrifyingly big like the titanosaurs and things. But most dinosaurs were normal-sized creatures. Many of them were obviously herbivores, so they ate plants. I'd like to see one of those in action. They look like they were amazingly designed creatures, and I have lots of questions about them. I want to know how those absolutely huge dinosaurs, how they got blood up to their brains. We talk about how small their brains were, and I have lots of questions about that. But how did they pump all that blood way up there? These things are more than twice as tall, or at least twice as tall, as giraffes are today. We know that giraffes have very specialized systems to allow them to be that tall. I want to know what was going on with those dinosaurs that allowed them to be massive in the way that a few of them were.
I think heaven's going to be a lot different from what we expect and what we have on this world. I don't know if there's any reason to have dinosaurs in heaven. I don't even know if we'll have horses in heaven. I don't know what's going to be there. But I'll leave that with the Lord. He can decide that, and I'll be happy with his answer.
I feel very strongly that dinosaurs will be in heaven. I think they're amazing creatures. And if it is a dinosaur Job is talking about, and Job 30 as behemoth, then he says it's the first of the creation of God. So it's something really special to him.
I don't want to see a dinosaur when I first get to heaven, because I'm still only 5'8". But we have the impression that we will grow up, and just to see these enormous organisms, I would feel like an ant, and maybe be squished. But certainly that possibility exists.
You know what I think? I think when we get to heaven, or perhaps more appropriately the new earth, we'll get a number of surprises. We'll be surprised by some of the people who are there. We might be surprised by some of the people who are not there. We might even be surprised by some of the animals that we see. Maybe animals that we've never seen before. Now, if God created dinosaurs to begin with, and they were wiped out by some means or another, no doubt they'll be there. But I'm willing to leave this one to God. If they're there, I'll be thrilled. That'll add some interest. If they're not, probably won't miss them too much.
This is a replica skull of an Edmontosaurus, the kind of dinosaur that they are finding the remains of thousands of there in the Wyoming dig site we just saw. Dinosaurs are a very popular subject today in the world, especially among kids. For many, they prove the idea that the world is millions of years old. But let's start thinking of them in a different way. Let's start thinking of them as a class of animals that God created that he might be actually rather proud of. Let's take a look at that now.
So, will there be dinosaurs in heaven? Then does the Bible say anything about dinosaurs? So there are a couple of interesting references. Even though the word dinosaur is a fairly modern term, is there any animal mentioned in the Bible that sounds like it could have been a dinosaur? First of all, in Genesis 1, it says, God created great sea creatures on day 5. The Hebrew word for creature is tenemim. Generally, in the rest of the Old Testament, tenemim refers to reptiles or long things. The most interesting reference is found in the book of Job, chapter 40, where it talks about the animal behemoth. This part of Job is actually a conversation between God and his suffering servant. The Creator is pointing out to Job that things he's made in nature in order to encourage Job to trust him more. For instance, God told Job, look now at the behemoth. The word behemoth means beast, which doesn't help us to identify, which I've made alongside you. He eats grass like an ox, so now his strength is in his hip, and his power is in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar. His bones are like beams of bronze, his ribs like bars of iron. So far, we get an image of a very powerful and impressive animal. And then he concludes with, he is the first of the ways of God. First of the ways of God. That has been studied by scholars in general, and the general understanding is that this is not a reference to chronology. In other words, not the first animal made by God before he made other animals. Instead, this is an animal that stands in first place among the animals. The most impressive, the most amazing, the alpha of all alpha animals. The popular view by scholars is that it might have been talking about a hippopotamus. It's strong and eats grass. It has powerful stomach muscles, but it says the behemoth moves its tail like cedar. What would that be a reference to? If you look at the tail of a hippopotamus, it would not remind you of the giant cedar tree, which is the largest tree in the world. Here's a picture of a hippopotamus, and here's a picture of Job standing next to him, to give you a great idea of his scale. And then plus, might God be referencing something like this dinosaur in the picture next to the hippo? This animal would be legendary to Job. And notice the tail? That's a powerful vegetarian animal, and the tail might indeed remind you of a giant cedar tree. Here's a tricky trivia question. Do creationists believe in some sort of evolution? Remember, the word evolution means change. Do creationists believe that many animals have changed in form? The answer is yes. We think of the serpent that tricked Eve in the Garden of Eden. The Genesis account says it became a cursed animal because of sin. God told the serpent, "You are cursed more than all cattle. On your belly you shall go. You shall eat dust." A curse in Hebrew thinking, makes something worse, tangibly worse than it was before. This is similar to a blessing. If something is blessed, it's far more than a thoughtful, cheerful hope. Indeed, it makes a difference. A curse does the same thing, but in a negative way. God tells the serpent, you no longer will be the attractive animal you were before, like the one you were able to have seed. You are going to be unattractive, even scarier creature. The Bible also says, you are cursed more than all cattle. All animals appear to have fallen from their original description. The Bible tells us that the earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth will be filled with violence. So God looked upon the earth, and indeed it was corrupt. For all flesh had corrupted their ways on earth. And God said to Noah, the flesh of all flesh has come before me, and for the earth is filled with violence through them. Something happened to the animal kingdom that turned them violent. Take a look at some of these animals. The Ankylosaurus is about the size of a dinner table, but he looks like he's ready for war. He looks like a combat soldier, and it makes you think that he lives in a violent world. The Stegosaurus has spikes on his tail, and the Pachycephalosaurus seems to be built to run into something. It looks like these guys lived in a very violent world. What is more likely to have happened is a catastrophe. Here's one of those rare areas where creationists and evolutionists tend to agree. There was some kind of catastrophe that took out a lot of animals in the world, including the dinosaurs. There is some evidence that meteors striking the earth were involved with the flood. But what sort of evidence is there? Okay, here's the famous thin layer. That is right at the top of the dinosaur layer called the Cathie boundary, at the top of the Cretaceous layer. There are no dinosaurs found above this layer. The thing that is interesting about this is that there's just a little bit of iridium in the Cathie layer. More than the surrounding rock, iridium is one of the rarest of all natural occurring elements. Okay. This is 1,000 times rarer than gold, but it is found just like a very slim bit more frequently in meteorites. And in the Cathie boundary, so does the dust that atop the dinosaur layer contain meteorite dust. And so does the dust that atop the dinosaur layers contain meteorite dust. That's the theory. Along with other evidence of meteorite strikes in the fossil layer, did meteorites really take out the dinosaurs? What's interesting about meteors potentially being involved in a devastating flood is the backside of the moon. It is always facing away from the Earth, but it is the line of sight of the Earth and has a tremendous number of meteor craters. One wonders if the earth could have been struck by one of those in the past. Scores of national tribal legends around the world detail human encounters with dragons. These encounters occur in every corner of the world from China to England, where pictures of painting from St. George slaying here's a picture of St. George slaying the dragon. Remember, the word dragon means large reptile, not necessarily fire breathing. Although not quite as common as the flood story, why are worldwide stories of these encounters? There are stories from ancient times casually mentioning a serpent or a reptile or dragon often in a case. And it's almost always the last one, never part of a herd, and rarely much larger than a horse. One wonders, perhaps, if these could have been the remnants of stories involving reptiles taken abroad aboard the ark and that survived for a period of time. Perhaps they are pre-flood or post-flood stories that grew over time. There is a consistency to them, though, since there were widespread legends of giant lions or tigers or bears, just lizards. Who were more of nuance than anything to the typical ancient house. Notice this promise in Isaiah where a future world is described. The wolf and the lamb shall feed together. The lion shall eat straw like the ox. The nursing child shall play by the cobra's hole, and the weaned child shall put his hand in the viper's den. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountains. This describes a gentle world, not a violent one, perhaps including dinosaurs. Awesome movie. Okay. The first verse that what we examined at the beginning of this presentation was the book of Revelation. So the great dragon was cast out, the serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. Remember in John's day, when he wrote the book of Revelation 2,000 years ago, the word dragon meant large lizard or large reptile. So I'm going to replace the word dragon with one that is very similar. So the great dinosaur was cast out, that serpent of old called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. His purpose is to deceive the whole world. Revelation 14 reveals God's reaction to the dinosaurs' warfare of deception, the dragon's warfare of deception and persecution, revealed in Revelation 12 through 13. Concluding with the second coming of Jesus, the three angels warned the world of Satan's final deception, calling humanity back to worship God as the creator. But here is another story of origin, but there is another story of origin out there, where God was not the creator, one that the devil would like to deceive the world into believing. And what better image to spread the story than an image of a dinosaur? When people see pictures of dinosaurs, isn't their first reaction something like this? Oh, dinosaurs! Yeah, millions of years ago, not Genesis. Forgetting the flood, many today embrace the culturally informed scientific story of uniformity, as was presented earlier in 2 Peter 3, verse 5 through 6. Hopefully our study today provided a different way of looking at the captivating world of dinosaurs. I hope you will join us next time for our fifth topic in the series, Age of the Earth.